You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. Before we dive in, a quick heads up. My Hebrew pronunciation can sometimes sound like autocorrect trying to guess your password. I do my best, but occasionally El Chaim comes out more like Lukam. So thank you in advance for your patience. Today's topic is Fiddler on the Roof. That's right, the musical, the movie, the book it came from, and why a fiddler balancing on a rooftop somehow became one of the most recognizable cultural symbols of Jewish life in the 20th century. We're going to explore why this story resonates so deeply, why people who have never been to a synagogue know, if I were a rich man, and how Tevye the milkman became everyone's favorite Jewish dad. So, grab your popcorn, or maybe your bagel with schmear, and let's wander into the world of Anatevka together. First things first, Fiddler on the Roof started its life in literature, not on Broadway. The story comes from the works of Sholem Aleichem, one of the greatest Yiddish writers. His character, Tevye the dairyman, first appeared in stories published in the 1890s, capturing the humor and heartbreak of shtetl life in Eastern Europe. Sholem Aleichem wrote these tales in Yiddish, which was basically the Netflix of its time for Jews. It was how stories were shared, jokes were cracked, and tears were shed. Tevye's character is all about contradictions, deeply traditional, but trying to figure out how to deal with a world that keeps changing around him. Sound familiar? That's basically every family dinner debate about whether you can bring your iPhone to the Shabbat table. The genius of Aleichem was that he made Tevye both specific to Jewish culture and universal enough that everyone could see a little of their own struggles in him. Now, fast forward to the 1960s, when Broadway decided to turn Tevye's world into a musical. In 1964, Fiddler on the Roof premiered with Zero Mostel in the lead role. Let me paint the picture. This was a time when Broadway was used to light comedies and jazzy show tunes. Suddenly, here comes a musical with Hebrew words, long beards, and a plot about anti-Semitism, poverty, and kids marrying for love instead of parental approval. It was risky, but it worked. Big time. The show won 9 Tony Awards, ran for more than 3,200 performances, and became the first Broadway musical to pass the 3,000 show mark. It also introduced millions of people to phrases like Mazel Tov and tradition. And yes, the exclamation point is mandatory. For many Americans, Fiddler was their first exposure to Jewish culture that wasn't just a punchline in a Borscht Belt comedy routine. Of course, we can't talk about Fiddler without mentioning the music. Composer Jerry Bach and lyricist Sheldon Harnick gave us some of the most iconic show tunes in history. If I Were a Rich Man is basically Tevye rapping before rapping was cool. Seriously, listen to that rhythm and tell me it's not proto-hip-hop. Matchmaker, Matchmaker is every teenager's worst nightmare set to music, and Sunrise Sunset has been sung at more weddings than Ed Sheeran's entire catalog. The opening number, Tradition, sets the tone. It's catchy, it's heartfelt, and it explains Jewish life better than most history textbooks. These songs didn't just entertain, they became part of cultural memory. Even people who have never seen the show recognize those melodies. It's like how everyone knows Let It Go from Frozen, even if they somehow avoided watching the movie. By 1971, Hollywood got into the act and turned Fiddler on the Roof into a big-screen musical directed by Norman Jewison, who, fun fact, was not Jewish, but Canadian. The movie starred Chaim Topol as Tevye, and his performance brought a quieter, more grounded energy compared to Zero Mostel's larger-than-life Broadway version. The film was a global hit, winning 3 Oscars and being nominated for Best Picture. For many families, especially Jewish ones, watching the movie became a ritual in itself, like watching the 10 Commandments every Passover or Home Alone every Christmas. The movie also expanded the reach of Fiddler far beyond Broadway, making Tevye's struggles relatable to audiences from Tokyo to Buenos Aires. And yes, somewhere out there is probably a karaoke version of If I Were a Rich Man in Japanese. So why a Fiddler on the Roof? The image comes from Marc Chagall's paintings of shtetl life, where fiddlers often appear perched on rooftops, symbolizing joy, fragility, and survival. In the musical, the fiddler represents the balance Jews had to maintain between holding on to tradition and adapting to change. Picture a fiddler trying to keep steady on a rooftop. One wrong step, and everything crashes down. That's basically the story of Jewish history in a nutshell. The title may sound whimsical, but it's actually a brilliant metaphor. It's like saying life is a high-wire act without a safety net, except instead of a trapeze artist, you've got a guy with a violin. And let's be real, that's way more poetic than calling the show Tevye's really stressful parenting adventure. At its heart, Fiddler on the Roof is about family and the tension between tradition and modernity. Tevye's daughters want to marry for love, not just because the matchmaker says so, and each choice pushes him further from his comfort zone. This hits hard because it's not just a Jewish story, it's universal. Every parent has wrestled with letting go of their kids' choices, whether it's who they marry, what career they pick, or whether they're moving across the world instead of down the block. Replace Anatevka with Suburban New Jersey or Seoul, and the story still works. It's about identity, compromise, and the struggle to adapt when the world won't stop changing. Tevye's conversations with God, his humor, his sighs, his stubbornness, these all make him timeless. He's basically the original sitcom dad, except with more goats. The show also deals with the darker side of history. Anatevka, the little shtetl where the story takes place, eventually becomes a place the Jews are forced to leave because of a pogrom. The happy songs and witty banter give way to the reality of anti-Semitism and displacement. That's why Fiddler is more than just a musical. It's a story about resilience. Audiences laugh and cry with Tevye, but they also leave with a deeper understanding of Jewish history and the fragility of community life. The final scenes, where families pack up and head into exile, resonate with anyone whose ancestors were forced to leave their homes. It's powerful, poignant, and a reminder that behind the catchy songs lies a history of struggle and survival. Over the decades, Fiddler has been revived countless times, from Broadway to high school auditoriums, and each generation finds something new in it. In the 2016 Broadway revival directed by Bartlett Sher, there was even a framing device where a modern man in a red windbreaker stood in for today's Jews connecting with Tevye's story. It's been performed in languages all over the world, proving that its themes aren't just Jewish, they're human. One fascinating fact: in Japan, Fiddler has been a massive hit for decades because audiences there relate to the theme of tradition versus change. So when you hear tradition shouted on a Tokyo stage, know that it resonates just as deeply as it does in New York or Tel Aviv. That's the power of storytelling. It crosses borders, cultures, and languages. So, whether you discovered Fiddler on the Roof through the original Sholem Aleichem stories, the 1964 Broadway show, the 1971 movie, or your cousin's high school drama club, the takeaway is the same. It's about balancing joy and sorrow, holding on to traditions while embracing change, and laughing through tears. Tevye the milkman may be fictional, but his voice has spoken for generations. He reminds us that even in uncertain times, a little humor, a little faith, and maybe a little song can keep us steady, like a fiddler on the roof. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a friend who might like it too, or leave a positive review so more people can discover the show. Until next time, keep humming those show tunes and maybe, just maybe, try a little tradition in your own life.